Hello everyone, and welcome to the seventh video in this Building Your Ultimate SharePoint Online Intranet series. We're back again, joined by good friend Sebastien. How are you doing, Seb?
Doing amazing, Vlad. What about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So what's the topic of our video right now?
So we want to talk a little bit about how we can turn on content approval in your SharePoint Online intranet, really bringing what we already built, but to a next level, getting people to approve, to collaborate together and validate the content before it goes live, especially around pages and news, right, Vlad?
Yes, and for those of you that this is the first video you're joining us on, this is, like I mentioned before, the seventh video in a bigger series. So if your goal is to learn how to build a SharePoint intranet from nothing to something amazing, make sure you watch the playlist. There's a link in the description. But of course, if you only want to learn about content approvals, you're at the right spot. So again, we're not going to do any slides other than this, and we're going to go back in our beautiful tech landing site. So, first thing we have to do is we need to go to the site pages library. Now, there's multiple ways you can actually do this, but my favorite lazy one is to go on any news, the first news that you see here, go in the URL, delete everything after site pages, and there you are. Now, of course, probably the more proper way would be to go here, go to site contents, and go to site pages. But I still like my way better, I'll be honest. It doesn't open as many tabs, a lot easier. Uh, Now, Microsoft made it super easy to turn on content approval. And uh, I mean, we didn't even talk why we need that, Seb. Probably we should talk a few seconds of why we actually want to enable that. I think
Absolutely.
for every intranet manager, it's actually like, of course I know why, but for many people, we're in a new world where people create content everywhere. Like, I mean, I didn't need anybody's approval to upload this on YouTube right now. I don't need a approval to go on Yammer and post something. Or in many companies, I can even go create a brand new team Steam and not have any approval. So, but for the intranet, I find that it's a more curated set of content compared to news on a team site, maybe where you share news about the project, best practices. I find that the intranet is in a way is more official, and many organizations, they want to have maybe not even an approval but just a simple spell check before that content goes out, so they make sure the content is quality. What other use cases have you seen, Seb?
I think there's one where it's especially for, and we're going to come back to that a little bit later, but multilingual scenarios to ensure that translation is accurate and it's just machine learning and or machine translation. That is something that I've seen. Also, something that I've seen is when you want to make sure that you're getting the right people to see the content, right? Before it goes out. You want to validate, you want to make sure that all of your team members are okay with the content and afterwards, because if not, if you publish, it's live. It's live
It's
for
live.
everybody. So if you bring people into that process, I think it makes a lot of sense. And also there's, think about, and I see a lot of content approval also coming with this, with a similar set of requirements than scheduling of news also, where you want to, hey, I want to pre-approve a page, but I want that news to only be available next Monday when it goes out. I think this is where it really kind of
We actually
ties it
haven't
all
talked
together.
about scheduling yet. We should maybe let's add this before we end this video. Let's also talk about scheduling, or maybe we should
Absolutely.
do it as a separate. No, let's just do it in this video. It'll be a lot easier. But yeah,
I
we
think
don't
the
have this on our plan, but they're
no,
kind of
exactly.
together, right?
Exactly. I see really that to be kind of the best of both worlds, where you can approve stuff. Some people have been using approval to delay until the actual
Yeah.
date that you want it to go roll out. But now you can couple these two capabilities, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, let's talk about approval first.
Yeah.
So, Microsoft made it super easy using this tool called Microsoft Power Automate. If you've never heard of it, I'll put some links in the description below so you can go learn everything about it because we're not going to go in depth, but we'll show you how it's done. So, under the automate option here, I see Power Automate, and then I can go create a flow, see my flows for this page, and again, Microsoft made it super easy. I can just click on configure page approval flow, and most of the job will be configured for me. So I'll click on it, and now it will ask me a few questions. First of all, I need to say create the flow, and now it will ask me things such as, okay, who's the approval? Okay, I guess first of all, it needs to make sure that I have everything. It doesn't want, why doesn't it like me? Invalid connection. Okay, just probably haven't signed in for too long. Just needed to do the little click. It happens in a lab environment because we don't play here every day, so things like that time out. Uh, you've seen it. If we haven't edited out anything, if it ever does that for you, click on the invalid connection. Takes 1 second. It wakes up. Okay, now the flow name. By default, and by the way, a flow is a workflow name, but that's the name it is in Power Automate. By default, it'll be submit SharePoint page for approval. If I have to give you a tip, make sure to put the name of the site
Yeah.
inside the name of the flow because this workflow will only be for this site. Remember, our intranet is a hub made of multiple sites. They each can have content approval turned on or off. It's fully independent. And if you want to have content approval everywhere, you would have to enable it everywhere and they would all have the same name. So that would not be super easy uh, for maintenance. So what I'll do here, I'll put tech landing and I'll just put uh, news and page approval. Also, maybe as a side note, this approval will apply to both sites, to both news, to both news and pages, because remember, a news is a page. Or is it the other way around? No, a news is a page, right?
It uses a page,
A news
absolutely.
is a page. Well, then a page is a news too, no?
Uh,
I'm joking.
we can
We're not
have
gonna get
long philosophical questions on that.
And then for this, the way that Microsoft built like the default experience is you have to provide the approvals right away. Since I don't trust Seb, I'll put myself as the approver over here. So I can, and you can of course add more people. But for some of you, you might not want to actually have always the same people. So after we created, we're going to look at how to make it more dynamic.
Vlad, just a
So
quick question here. When you put multiple approvers, are they one after the other? Is it the first one that responds? Like if we're using this as the base scenario and you add multiple approvers, what's going to happen here?
well, I'll show you where to look for that information before I
Excellent.
answer, because this way you can change it as well.
Awesome. Perfect.
Let me actually, that was super fast. Let me
Yes.
go to flow.microsoft.com and let me go sign in here. I will go to my flows and then I see the tech landing, news, and page approval. Some of my connections are not good. Again, gotta love that demo environment. Okay, so what happens? For a selected item, so in the tech landing, it shows the list name as a GUID, which is not the easiest, but we know we created it from there. It's the right one. Then it starts a scope. Scope, it's just a way to organize stuff in Power Automate.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It'll get the file properties, get the file metadata, set the content approval status to pending. So let's actually stop here and go create the news now so we can follow it in real time.
Do
I
you
will
want
go
to,
back to the home page. Let's
Vlad,
go.
Vlad, before, do you want to make sure that your connections are updated so it launches the flow in the right way?
I think they should be good. Let me go data connections. Those ones should probably be good because it prompted me when we created it. So
Yes, but
that should be good.
no, you're still. It feels like there's yeah.
I'll fix them. I'll
Okay,
fix them
perfect.
for you, Seb.
Thank you
If it
so
makes
much.
you happy,
It,
I'll take the 30 seconds to do it.
it
Again, this is probably something that you're not gonna see in your production environment. I haven't logged in this account in a few months, so that's the reason why it timed out like that. I haven't really seen this happen in a production environment, but I guess after the targeting demo, we want to make sure we put everything on our side and get
yes.
all the demos working in the same video, right? Okay, so I will go create a new news post now. I'll just do the visual, create post. I will call it test approval. And you can see that it still gives me all of the tours everywhere. We've done most of the demos under Seb's account so far. So first one on this site with my account. But what I want to attract your attention on is here at the top right. Instead of post like we had before, now it says submit for approval. When I click on it, it will actually ask me a message. And I skipped over it a bit fast earlier, but you see, for a selected item, we actually have an optional input here called a message, add a note. So I will see it here again. First time launching this flow, it will ask me to validate the connections. It asks me for this message. So this is kind of cool because if you want to, you can add more information. So as people request a page approval, you can actually ask them to add more information of why do they need this. Maybe even a date. Maybe you want to have something more advanced than the base scheduling with Microsoft. You can add a date there. You can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will do I am the boss. I'll put this as the message, and then I will click on submit. Okay, so back to our flow. So we basically started with the message. Power Automate would get the file properties, get the file metadata. It will set the content approval status to pending. So if we go to the site pages here, let's go to test approval. You see the approval status is in pending, so it's done the right thing so far.
Vlad, let me ask
And
you something. Right now, what happens to that file? If I'm a regular user, can I have access to the file while it's pending, or
you
it's
do
only for
not
you?
see that file.
Okay.
Only people that have the approval rights in SharePoint. So if you're a site owner, you will see it. If you're just a contributor or a viewer, you will not see that file. So a
Perfect.
normal user would not actually see that file. But if you're an owner, you have access to it. And of course, that's the goal of why you're a site owner, you should have access to that.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Okay, then we'll go into the start an approval action, and I'll maybe zoom in a tiny bit more. And I'll just show advanced options right away. By default, you will see that the approval type is first to respond. Remember, I added both me and Seb, and by default, it will be whoever answers first, it'll be done. But if let's say you have a executive communications corner and you want to have okay, before somebody posting that, we got to make sure it goes to 2 or 3 people, you can set it to everyone must approve. So you can do something like that. And you see it now put all of the Vlad and admin, which is Seb's account. Something that is pretty cool, and that's new. Let's see if you'll show me some love. You can actually assign it to a security group as well. And this is pretty new now. You couldn't do that a few months ago. So you could do it by a security group as well, like communications at company.com. But for now, I'll just put Vlad back here. You can also modify the requester. So by default, with Power Automate, the requester will be the person who created the flow. So this is probably not the most fun thing because if I created the flow and then all the communications people will see, approve this news by Vlad. And they're gonna be like, Vlad, what are you doing all day? Creating stuff? You should be working in IT. So you can actually add the requester, and now I have to zoom out just a little bit. I'll go for a selected item and I'll take the username, which is the display name of the user who triggered the flow. So this way I can show that person who triggered the flow. Of course, in this example, as we go to my emails, it will be me because I'm the one that triggered the flow, but you can modify those things. And
Vlad,
at the end,
this has if you click on the X around username, I think it actually in the requester it asks for your email in that case.
you
That
can I think you can actually do, let's see, it accepted both of them. But you
okay,
have the
perfect.
username, the email, the user ID, and you can also get it from the file metadata. And here,
Yeah,
it's really weird that here you have two of them with username. This looks like a little bug in Power Automate right now. If you want to be sure, you have the get file metadata. So then here you really have, or get file properties, and you have a lot more information. This is
yeah,
really all the full file properties. I'd actually maybe go for this one for the get file properties instead, because then you can maybe even get last modified by and things like
yeah.
that. So
Cool.
you really have a lot of flexibility. But okay, I'll just leave it like that for now. Again, we want our demos to work, so I'll leave it like that. But I think display name would work. That's my
Okay.
opinion. We're maybe gonna have to Google it after and put it in the description. Vlad was right or Seb was right. Uh, but okay, after that, there's a condition. So the condition is, and I have to click on expand condition, if the response is equal to approve, and by the way, the biggest mistake I make, and of course, it doesn't happen here because Microsoft created it for us, but as I think of it, I'm like, if the response is equal to approved, I always write it as approved. And then I wonder why my flows don't work. So it's approved without a D that you have to put by default. Again, if you have a Power Automate license, you can actually have custom options as well. So not only approve or deny, you can have other options as well. And if the answer is approved, it will set the content status to approved, and after that it will look at the scheduled information. And that's kind of cool now what they did. If you have scheduling enabled, and we'll talk about that in just a second, it will also wait, of course,
Yeah.
until it's until the publish date before publishing it. And if not, it will send an email notification to say like, hey, your page was denied. And as you can see, it really has like a full HTML body in here. It's not the prettiest thing. But again, the beautiful thing is you can actually customize it after. You can even, instead of using the send an email notification, you can use the Outlook connector, which in my opinion makes it a lot easier to do pretty emails without having to write all of this
Yeah.
stuff that looks like Seb's code every day. uh, a lot easier.
Agree.
Okay, now I will just go. Do I have Power Automate here? If I go to action items, approvals, I should actually see it here. Test approval requires approval for publishing. I will click on approve. Let's click on confirm over here. And it'll take a few seconds, but as I refresh here, it now shows as approved. So again, this was really, really basic. If you want to take it to the next level, and again, we're really getting into like the Power Automate tips and tricks. You could even, for example, let's say at the end here, you could add something such as get the manager of the user that asked for this workflow. So I will get the let me get the email. I'll get the modified by email, so the person who last modified it by example, and then the approval, instead of always going to the same person, it can go to, let's see, the is it the email or the username that it gives me? User principal name here. So we'll assign it to the manager, basically. So you can have this dynamic. So it doesn't always go to the same person to approve everything. It will go to the manager of the user who submitted it. Maybe not the use case for an intranet, but that can be interesting for a team site, for example, or
Yeah.
for a best practices site in order to offload the approvals from the same user every single time. Okay, so those are the basics on how to create an approval. And probably you might be hearing it as well because of all the emails that are sent. I'm getting notifications because stuff like you get an email in the inbox whenever stuff gets approved, stuff gets denied. So you might hear those notifications as well. Don't worry, I got the email, not you. Uh, okay, now let's talk about scheduling. I'll close Power Automate and I'll go back to site pages. Scheduling again, super, super easy. You actually have a button here called scheduling. You click on it, and then it's only one thing. Do you want to enable scheduling or not? So we can enable scheduling. Awesome. And then let's refresh. And what I'll do now is I'll actually go back to the home, create a new news post. Doesn't matter. We'll do create new news post. I'll do news in the future. And if I go to page details, here I now have a new option. Do you want to schedule this news in the future or not? So if I click on yes, and I have a new option here, when do you want to publish it? Let's say we want to do it in 1 week at 11 a.m. And for the time zone, does it show? No, it doesn't show. So it will always be the local time of the site, right, Seb?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. So it's
I'm
it's
pre-
gonna have to validate on that if it's the local site or the local time or your local time. That's gonna be stored then in the local time of the site. Definitely time zones and
Yeah, time zones are tough. And this might not be a problem for everyone. If your organization is all in the same time zone, you're fine. You don't need to worry about this stuff. But if you're
exactly.
an international organization, time zones are important. And I know I've researched this before. I'm 100% sure I've Googled this before, but I always double check just in case. I'm pretty sure it's the one of this site, but we'll see. Okay, so great. Now I will put it like that. I will submit for approval. Again, I'll just show you how it works. I'll put here test, doesn't matter. If I go back to Power Automate and just to show here, you see expanding approval still. If I go to site pages, the publishing stat, the approval status here will be pending. And we don't have, I think, a test viewer user that we can play with. I will approve it. But if we actually go to the flows, and I will go inside this flow, I can see all of the flows that are succeeded or running. I will go in this one here. It's still running. So if we look at what happened, the condition, okay, so it still needs to refresh. Now, start an approval. That was good. Approve. This is running. Okay, no, this actually ran. Set the content status to approved. So it actually approved it. But now it went into the other condition, which is was it scheduled or not? And then it will show it'll do delay until, and it will put it at the 15th of October, when is the actual date we set in publishing. And after that, it will actually publish it. So it's really cool that this workflow can do both of them at the
Absolutely.
same time in a way. And you don't need to mess with it if you have both content approvals and scheduling enabled.
And I can confirm that even with my account, which is an owner of this exact same site, I cannot see the news today because it's still not available. So you won't see it either because it's not yet published. So SharePoint automatically make sure that all non-published content is not available, not only through the UI and through the roll-ups, right? But also through search. So if you're searching for content, you will not find the super amazing news that has to come up like in a week from now. It's going to be fairly secure. So that's great. That's great news.
Yep, and yeah, and I mean it was super easy. We didn't need to do. We kind of went into details, and we wanted to show you different things and customizations. But if you don't want to, both scheduling and content approval is like 10 clicks, and you're done. That's it. If you
Um,
want just that simple approval, it's so easy.
it reminds me how this used to be like a very complex scenario back either in the classic SharePoint days or in the on-prem versions or even in the early days of that beautiful experience that we have now in modern SharePoint. And now it's just 2 clicks away, a couple of clicks away in configuration. So that's amazing. So happy that you showed that, and I think that's going to delight any communication manager.
Talking about the old days, imagine if we'd have had to show this in SharePoint Designer with the old workflow.
Good old days.
If you don't know what SharePoint Designer is, don't even bother Googling it, okay? Don't even search for it. Don't look at it. It's all about Power Automate now. Those are good dreams and nightmares at the same time about SharePoint Designer. But this is it for this video on how to turn on content approvals and news scheduling in SharePoint Online. Some important tips and tricks. Remember that you have to do it on every single site part of the intranet, because if I go to my Vlad Talks Tech site, I go on a new news post, I'll just click create post here. You see, this is another site. I can post, it doesn't go through the same approval. So you need to do this for every single site in the hub. And you need to remember to do this if you add new sites in the future and you want this functionality, you also need to have it there. And at the same time, if you're in the IT department, make sure you don't set yourself as the approval. Put somebody in the communication department, share the flow with them. This way, IT doesn't become a bottleneck. But I think this is it for this video, Seb. Did we miss anything else?
I don't think so. I think we're in good shape now.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching this quick video on content approval and scheduling. If you've enjoyed this video and want to learn more about Microsoft 365 SharePoint, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And in the next video, we're going to talk about multilingual in SharePoint Online. We're probably going to use a lot of French since both me and Seb speak it. So it's going to be fun. Thank you very much for watching.